Hello and welcome back. So we're talking about electrification today, and I'm going to start with electric cars. One of the things about electric cars is a lot of people talk about the range. Well, let's just jump right into that. So let's just take the number of 250 to 300 miles of range. Now, a lot of people are like, well, electric car is not going to work for me. That's just not far enough. My cabin up north is, 200 and some miles from here. Okay, well, fine. Well, let's get into that. And let's just say you're taking a little trip, you got the family in the car, right? Most people over a 4 hour drive, that's about as far as people go. 4.5 hours when they go to like a cabin situation where they want to get away, but they don't want to be too far away, right? Sure, that might be at the edge of your battery range, but you're probably going to stop once to get out in that situation. So let's break that down for a minute. You got the family, the kids, they got to get out, they got to go to the bathroom. You're stopping for lunch on the way or breakfast on the way or whatever, checking out some of the towns that you pass through on the way to your cabin or whatever it is you're going to, or let's just say you're even going further, you're going across country. It doesn't matter. You're at the end of that range limit. There are some cars in this world today, electric cars, that are, when they get, let's say they're around 20%, they can get up to about 80% in 20 minutes, depending on what type of charger that they're hooked up to. Now, you might say, okay, well, what type of charger? I can't go to any. No, you can't go to any charger and charge up at the same rate. There's a lot of um, different chargers, and what I'm getting at here is now the technology has quickly evolved to where that 20% to 80% being able to be done in 20 minutes in some cars. And that technology is going to follow with the industry, and that's only going to get better with the whole industry as a whole in the next couple of years. So anyway, let's just say you have one of those cars that can go from 20% to 80% in about 20 minutes, right? Okay, so you get out of the car, you're hooked up to the charger. That's going, the kids are going to the bathroom. You're taking the dog for a walk to do his business. You're getting your snacks at a convenience store because a lot of these chargers are by design close to conveniences. Um, you know, in the same parking lot as a convenience store, another gas station, that type of thing. Shopping centers, whatever. Um, all of that. That's all by design. They're usually by very close within a very short distance, across the street or up the block or whatever, right? So anyway, you're doing your thing with your family, and that's going to take 20 minutes. If I go to a gas station right now and I have all the kids in the car and I have the dogs in the car, and they all have to get out and go to the bathroom, get a couple snacks, I've already used up 20 minutes. So that kind of takes away from that range anxiety type thing. And let's talk about the day-to-day use with an electric car. We're going to take a Tesla Model 3, for example. Um, Even if you plugged into your standard wall outlet, your 120, so just to make that clear, a regular wall outlet is what you plug almost every appliance into your house into, like you plug your toaster into, okay? So we've got that figured out, right? So you want that to be on probably at least a 20 amp breaker. You could probably go 15 depending on your situation. Do not take me word for word. I know with the Teslas, you can change the draw that they have. You can set it for the amount of amperage in the system in the car. You can set that to how much it's going to draw in case you are on a lower charger, or not charger, but on a lower breaker, so that way you don't have a problem, or you're on a larger breaker. You can adjust that accordingly. So let's say you're on a 20 amp breaker, which is really the standard for most situations is going to be a 20 amp breaker. So you're going to get about 4 miles of charge out of that per hour. So, well, when you think about that, you're like, oh gosh, that's not a lot for an hour's time. Well, really it isn't, but let's just take a look at your day. Let's say you start work at 7, you're at work all day, you're at work until 4 or whatever. Get home maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock, right? You're running around and that type of thing, picking up the kids from school, soccer practice, whatever they're doing. Kids are busy. There's a little bit of running around, right? Okay, so now you get home and you're having dinner, and it gets to be about 8 o'clock or whatever, right? You're settling down for the night. So you plug in the car, or you have a timer system set up. Some of the cars you can have them set up to where that once they're plugged in, they're not necessarily charging, but they're waiting for a specific time to start charging. So let's say they start charging at 8 o'clock, and you are on the road by 6:30. So you charge from 8 to 6 o'clock, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Right? That's 10 hours, right? So then you have 40 miles that you just put into your car. Okay, so for let's say for myself, for example, I work my job. I have a 40-mile round trip. So most of that would be for what I did during the day would be almost a wash. I would be almost fully charged every day. And I shouldn't say fully charged because you really don't want to charge your car up to 100% all the time. You want to keep it a little under that. That's why the chargers, a lot of when they talk about charging, when we talked about the 20 to 80, once you get up to 80%, the charging rate in your car slows down dramatically. And that's by design, but that's a whole different topic. Um, you really don't want to charge up to 100% unless you're going on a lengthy trip and you want to get that extra amount out of it and that little bit of a buffer zone in case you get to a charger and that one's not working and you got to go over to the next one or whatever. It is what it is. So when you're talking about at-home charging, even off a standard wall outlet, for most people's situations, even if you charge a couple times a week, two, three times a week, you're going to be fine. Now let's add 220 on top of that. A 220 is what you would have that your dryer runs off of, your electric dryer, or a welder, that type of thing. If you're for people that are mechanically inclined, people that work out in the garage, some air compressors run off that higher voltage. But anyway, we're getting too far off track. So let's say you add a 220. Okay, you have a 220 in your garage or whatever, or you add one. That is going to charge so much faster than your regular standard wall outlet. So really, if you had something like that, you're charging your car in a couple of hours at home from almost, nothing to, 100%, almost 100%, so and that doesn't cost much to put in 220 if you don't already have it. If you have a post, let's say you put a post out in your yard right next to your driveway that you want to charge your car off of, or you have something on the side of your house or whatever, or you're in the garage, fine, whatever. There are people that you don't, so that's the other thing. You don't have to be in a garage, in a building to charge your car. You can charge outside in your driveway, and that's not going to hurt your car. Okay, so anyway, so we have that kind of out of the way, the range anxiety thing, right? So now a lot of people are talking about, okay, well, the charging, where are you getting your charging from? Because our electric car is really more environmentally friendly than internal combustion cars. Well, yes, absolutely. And here's a few factors why. So even if your electricity comes from coal or natural gas fired power plants, one thing to consider with that is the charging, or I'm sorry, the electric infrastructure is getting cleaner by the minute in the United States. We're doing a lot of wind, solar, hydro, more wind and solar than hydro, but a lot of that green energy is being incorporated into the energy grid almost across the entire United States. So that's getting cleaner by the minute. So that's one. Okay, so then you take a look at your electric car. Okay, I'm sitting in traffic with a gas powered car, and my gas powered car is idling away. I'm in a traffic jam, right? I'm just sitting there polluting, basically going nowhere, right? Electric car, I have no point of use pollution, meaning that when I'm using that vehicle, it's not polluting anything, right? So I'm sitting in that traffic jam, I'm not polluting, right? So that there's a factor right there, right? Stop and go lights, same thing, whatever, drive through at the restaurant, um, and all that. So if you were to, put all that together, that's huge right there. Just your idling time while you're sitting in traffic, drive throughs, whatever may have you, right? Um, One of the other things that is such a benefit with the electric cars that make them so much more energy efficient and better for pollution is the fact that thinking about the regen, right? Is when you're slowing down and you're on the brakes, you are putting power back into the battery system, right? And when you're going coasting downhill, depending on what your regen is set at, depending on what kind of car you have or whatever, you let off the gas and you're getting regen going down that steep grade or whatever. You're putting power back into the car. I've seen some videos where they've went up the mountains with electric cars and come down the other side with the electric cars. And they actually gained, in some situations, more than what they've used going up that steep grade and going down the other side. Um, that's not all cases, obviously, but that's just an example. So you don't have anything with a gas powered car where you're putting range back into the battery, or I'm sorry, back into the you're not putting gas back in the gas tank no matter what you do, unless you have a fuel truck that is pacing you and pumping gas right over to it, right? And obviously no one's doing that. Okay, so we've got that, and there's just so many factors with that that are just better for efficiency. So you're talking straight out of the box. If you take electric is so much more efficient with it, the way that um, how it transfers the power to the ground in an electric car versus um, a gas powered car. There's just so much less moving parts, in that scenario. And it's just that there's so much less energy loss in that transition of power to get moving. So there's so many factors with that. And then when you think about, okay, now I'm not going to the gas station as often, there's so many people aren't going to the gas station as often. So the other factor you need to think about too is your gas at your gas station is delivered in a diesel truck. In most situations, it's a diesel truck, right? So the less trips that diesel truck is making to your gas stations, and there's how many thousands of gas stations all over the place. The town I live in has at least five gas stations. I think there's actually more, right? Um, so think about that. You're having less trips with those diesel trucks delivering that fuel. Um, so that's a benefit right there to the environmental thing. So the next topic that I want to hit with the electric cars is fire. There, there's people that are like, oh my gosh, these electric cars start on fire. And I just want to bring a figure that I have to you just a second. I got to get it. All right, now that I have my note back in front of me, let's talk about the electric vehicle fires for a minute. So you'll see it, it gets trending on social media, on the news, whatever. Okay, there was a XYZ car, that electric car that had a fire today, and they show the video of that, and it's dramatic and everything. And the first thing I'm going to say is the news is in the business to sell news, okay? Let's be honest about that. No matter what topic you're talking about. Second, the thing to look into is here's some real world facts, and you can look it up online. In 2020, there were 173,000 reported car fires in the United States, right? Okay, so that means that internal combustion engine cars have fires on a daily basis. Okay, they always have, they always will. We're going to have some more electric vehicle fires. We're not going to get away from that, right? But 173,000 cars in the United States in 2020 for fires that were reported. Okay, and that's a key note in there, that were reported. So if you do anything with numbers and statistics and anything like that, you know that there is always more than what is reported. So if I have a beater car and I'm on my way to work and the thing catches on fire and I'm able to put that fire out with a fire extinguisher that I have in the car. Now, most times you're not gonna be able to do that because vehicle fires are very rapid and quick. But let's just say that that happens, and I'm sure it does. And that's a junk car. Like I said, it's a beater car. Okay, that's the last thing I want to put up with that car. I'm done with it. It caught on fire. It's over. I'm going to get a tow truck, or I'm going to call my buddy or somebody to come with a trailer. We're going to pick up this car. We're going to take it to the junkyard, and we're done with it, right? You're not going to call up the cops and say, "Hey, I had my 1973 Coupe de Ville start on fire on the side of the road. I just wanted someone to know." Most most people aren't going to do that, right? Okay, so there's a certain percentage of cars that go unreported that start on fire. Um, so let's not take too much about the reports of electric cars starting on fire on TV because no one covers a gas car starting on fire. It just doesn't sell news. If you saw the headline that said 2022 Honda Civic starts on fire on County Road F in the middle of XYZ County in Georgia. Took 10 minutes to put it out once the fire department got there. You don't care? That's not going to make, you're not going to, whatever. You don't care. That just doesn't trigger something in your head. So that's something that is just kind of propaganda that is just spread amongst the masses and hits social media and then everybody freaks out. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. The other thing is now less maintenance, okay? So think about the oil changes. I've been doing oil changes my entire life that I've been driving, right? And maybe only a couple times until just recently have I taken my car in for an oil change. Up until a couple months ago, I've only taken my car in like 3 times to get an oil change just out of convenience because I didn't have time to deal with it in my schedule or whatever. So I'm 42 years old, started driving at 16, was changing oil on cars before that. So you do the math, whatever. We're not going to, I've been doing this a while, right? So I'm getting sick of sitting in my driveway in the snow or whatever and doing my oil change. And I've actually started taking my cars in. And that's expensive, you know. I called my mechanic the other day and I said, "Hey, how much is it going to be for a oil change and a tire rotation?" Well, for what that broke down to is for the oil that they use and the amount of miles that I can go with my car, which is 6,000, according to the manual. Um, they were telling me that it was going to be a price with the tire rotation of $115. Well, that is expensive. You know, that's expensive for most people, right? So that's one of the things. Okay, you're going to save cost on oil changes. You're not going to get away from the tire rotations. You still have to do that. Um, but you're not going to have to worry about as many fluids as well. You know, so think about a normal, regular internal combustion engine car. You have your gasoline, you have your oil, you have your sometimes power steering fluid. Yet a lot of cars have gone to electric power steering, so you can't. That's kind of a little bit. Not all cars have power steering fluid anymore. You have your antifreeze also to worry about, right? In your cars. So what happens with that is think about okay, there's spills at gas stations and that type of things when some people are pumping their cars. Even when you take the nozzle out, there's going to be a little bit of gas that might drip out of the nozzle sometimes, fall to the ground. That all creates to pollution, ground source water pollution, that type of thing. When you're just filling up these cars with gas or you're doing an oil change, you're gonna sometimes you spill a little bit of oil. It doesn't get all picked up, even if you know, try and go after it right away. You're going to lose some to the ground, right? That's all going into the water, creating pollution. You're losing money. You spilt on the ground, you're losing money. It's costing you money, right? That's the other factor. And the other thing to think about that is with maintenance down the road. You know, you get a car on the road for 80, 100,000 miles, right? It's going to start eventually developing leaks. And a lot of cars, yes, they run for 200,000 miles plus in today's world. Now it starts to develop a leak. Now, most people don't get that leak fixed right away, so then the leak gets worse. And as you're driving around and you're picking up the kids from soccer or whatever, or you're going out to the movies, everywhere you go, you're leaking oil or you're leaking antifreeze or you got a hole in your gas tank and you're leaking gas, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's happening on every car, and I'm not saying that everything is leaking, okay? So we're not trying to dramatize this. I have had a car where every fluid has leaked at one point in my life. I've had some really, really bad cars. But you get the point that I'm getting at is that most people, once they know that something is leaking, they don't get it fixed right away, and you're just spreading that all over wherever you go, right? So, and you're losing money, and every drop that comes out, you're losing money. So that's a definite cost savings there. And okay, so now we have cooling. There's cooling fluid on some of the electric cars. That's about the only extra fluid that I know that's in an electric car. The battery cooling fluid is besides the fluid that you're going to have on all cars, like windshield washer fluid, right? Okay. Um, so that's definitely one another thing to think about. You're going to have a lower cost of maintenance. There's way less moving parts. It's just, if you go by the numbers, it's just a win, with 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 the maintenance and everything. Um, One of the other things that we should have talked about when we were talking about charging is people are worried about the electric grid. Well, okay, so let's think about history for a little bit and think about this fact. If you were to take all of the internal combustion cars, take them off the road today and replace them with all electric cars, it would really only be about a 30% increase on the electric grid. And actually, I shouldn't say only because that is significant, but 30% is kind of gets your attention because I think most of you would maybe probably agree that when you hear 30%, that's not as high as you thought it would be, which for me it wasn't, but it's still a decent number. And let's take a look at the history now. Let's look back when people started to get refrigerators in their homes. They went from ice boxes where a service came around, they delivered ice. They gave you ice and put in this ice box to keep your stuff cold. It was a thing. Honest to goodness. So you go from ice boxes to an electric refrigerator. And refrigerators still to this day are one of the most hungry appliances that you have in your home. One of the things that consume the most electricity. And in fact, the electric companies sold people the refrigerator on financing plans. Your utility company sold you a refrigerator um, on a payment plan when they first started becoming popular. They made it accessible to get that appliance into your home. Why? Because they sell electricity, right? So what is an electric company going to do? They're going to do what they can to sell you an electricity. Now, no, I'm not saying that electric companies are going to get into the business of selling cars. They're not. I mean, at least I don't think they are. Uh, that's I don't want that to happen. So that was just an example that they're going to do what they can to sell you that electricity. They're going to make it work, and they are making it work, right? Now, what happened? You fast forward past the dawn of the refrigerator, and you jump into air conditioners. Now, I'm sure there were people that were saying on both sides of the refrigerator, air conditioners, that oh my gosh, if we add that to the utility grid, we're just going to run out of power. I don't know what we're going to do. That's going to be such an increased load. Air conditioners are something that almost everybody has in their house these days. At least, I think almost the average working family, I guess I should say, probably has some form of air conditioning, whether it's just one window unit or central air or a heat pump or whatever. So we got past that. We started getting air conditioners, and the utility company did what they needed to do to catch up to the infrastructure to handle air conditioners. So the point is, you want to buy electricity, the electric company, they're gonna do what they need to do to sell you electricity. They're not it it's going to work out. We've made it work years ago. We're going to make it work again. Um, so that's kind of where we're at with the electric cars. And, some of the other things with the electrification is, let's take a look at yard equipment, for example. I have a Toro electric lawnmower. I have just under a quarter acre in a city lot. And that does great for mowing the yard. I've had electric weed eaters for probably 15 years, except for I did have a gas powered weed eater in the last 15 years for a little bit. When I wore one of my electric weed eaters out after quite a bit of use, after a number of years. They last a long time. Now I have an Ego weed eater. I have an Ego blower. Um, and that works really well. I don't miss going to the gas station, filling up a gas can, putting it in my car, getting some gas in my car, the smell of gas in my car, all of that. It's nice not to have that, you know, as much, right? And they work fine. If you were to take a statistic for your average city lot, and look at the pollution that an actual mower puts out equals the distance that the modern car drives in 40 miles. So your mower on an average city lot in the United States produces as much pollution as your average car going 40 miles. That's kind of a eye-opening statistic with the pollution end of it. Um, and a lot of people are transferring to electric yard or battery operated, I guess, yard equipment. And that's a good thing too. And that's kind of what is helping fuel fuel. Is that the right word to use with this video? It's helping fuel the transition to electrification with cars, because if people start out small, they get an electric mower, they get a couple of pieces of yard equipment that I've already talked about, and they realize that, hey, this isn't so bad. That starts the transition in their thought process about an electric car, you know. And this type of thing is happening throughout the world. Some of the countries are a lot further ahead than we are. And then you start talking about, like I said, I did a video on an electric heat pump. I have an electric heat pump air conditioner. And, that's another transition away from, like natural gas, that type of thing. So I guess when so it is what it is. And that's what the world is changing to, whether you like it or not. That's where we're going, and that's where the movement is at. All these auto manufacturers have talked about how they're going to be almost exclusively electric by such and such a date, and a lot of them are like 2030, 2035. That's not that far off. Okay, so this is something that we need to start, kind of getting in the conversation, the positives of what's going on here. And there are a lot more positives than negatives with the electrification. So, with that said, that's where I'm going to end the video today. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe. That would greatly help me out. I would greatly appreciate that. This show is on a budget. So, hit like, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.